Hello and welcome to the People First Potential channel here on Bright Talk. I'm Deb Calvert and I'm delighted to spend a little time with you today. I want to encourage you, if you're listening on demand, to post your questions throughout the presentation. I'll try to take them as they come. And if I am unable to get to any of them, I'll find your email and I'll send you an answer to the question. I don't want anyone to walk away without their questions answered. If you're listening on demand, you'll have to email me your questions and I'll be glad to answer those too. I really enjoy the interactions that come from these presentations. If you're new to Bright Talk, there are a couple things I want you to know. First of all, we try to load up some bonus resources and give people some next steps after each of these presentations. Right underneath the slides, you'll see a tab called Attachments. Check it out. The slides from this presentation are in there for you, so you can download those and use them to take some notes along the way. I encourage you to connect with me on LinkedIn. I always enjoy that opportunity to take the conversations further over there as well. And don't forget, you can download a certificate after you view this presentation. Take advantage of that opportunity as well. So, questions, certificates, attachments, and at the end, if you would please be so kind as to give me a review. I always appreciate knowing what you liked as well as what you didn't like, what you'd like to see different the next time around. I'm Deb, and I want to offer you two resources. PeopleFirstPotential.com, that's People First Leadership Academy. And if you go there, you're going to find that there are a lot of presentations, many of them free, all of them affordable, if not free. And those workshops over there are different from what you have here on Bright Talk. They're interactive, many of them. And so if you would like to go deeper into a topic or have an opportunity for it to be more personalized, join us. We always appreciate that. We'll be doing one pretty shortly here about trust is a two-way street. Another one, Introduction to the Leadership Challenge. Those are both free, both early in February, but recurring. So if you're seeing this later on demand, don't worry, you haven't missed your opportunity. And the other resource I'd like to offer you is my company, People First Productivity Solutions. We do a lot of consulting and architecture of leadership development programs. I'm a student of leadership, and I very much enjoy hearing about and helping with those initiatives that you have to develop leaders inside your organization. Today's topic is servant leadership. I'm going to talk about what it is in its original form and its intention. I'll talk about what it's not because it's been misunderstood. And the term servant leadership is misapplied because of that misunderstanding, and it takes people in the wrong direction. So we'll talk about what it is, what it isn't, and what you can do specifically to be a servant leader. The origins of servant leadership. Well, that term, servant leader, was coined by Robert Greenleaf back in a 1970 essay that he called The Servant as Leader. Greenleaf, he defined servant leaders as people who were driven to meet other people's highest priority needs. And he contrasted that to a paradigm where a leader might be very self-focused, or where the leader might be elevated or out of touch with people. And he was one of the first to say, if you're thinking it's lonely at the top, you're probably doing it wrong. You also may have heard the misperception that leaders live in ivory towers. He disabused us of that notion too. No, leaders should be among the people. Now, Gandhi, he has a famous quote that says, "I must follow the people. Am I not their leader?" And so that's gotten sort of bound up. That quote, that image of Gandhi has gotten sort of wound up in the interpretation of what it means to be a servant leader. And I understand why people gravitate toward this being appealing, because to have the contrast, the leader who's an elitist, who's up high, who is somehow removed from and out of touch with people, none of us want that, including the leader. And we all like the idea of a leader being a little more humble, definitely more in touch, and serving people, being a leader with the objective to serve. So we're on the right track to see that contrast, but it has been misinterpreted. It doesn't go quite to perhaps the extreme that you're thinking of. Greenleaf said that the leader is first a servant. The leader has a servant heart, a servant mind, a desire to support and help others. It's not the ambitious kinds of motivations or the drive for power or the pursuit of material possessions. That was the contrast that he made. And he said these are polar opposites. You can't be both at the same time, self-serving and power hungry at the same time that you have a servant's heart. Servant leadership is marked by these attributes. When someone is truly a servant leader, in the way Greenleaf first defined it, that person serves others so that the others can grow. Top priority, servant leaders help other people to grow in their own right. And a servant leader is helping people to become healthier, wiser, freer, more autonomous, and somehow in their own right, not only to lead, but to also become servants to others. And Greenleaf, he measured whether someone was a servant leader or not by the impact. So across an organization, looking at what people in other places in the organization, how they were responding, what they were doing, were they becoming more dependent on the leader or more independent? Servant leadership plays out in a way that people become more independent, more able on their own. So here's his actual definition. I'm going to go ahead and read this and park on it for just a moment. Robert Greenleaf said, a servant leader focuses primarily on the growth and well-being of people and the communities to which they belong. While traditional leadership generally involves the accumulation and exercise of power by one at the top of the pyramid, servant leadership is different. The servant leader shares power, puts the needs of others first, and helps people develop and perform as highly as possible. So within that, hopefully you can see the other orientation, the priority on people growth, the sharing of power that includes distributed decision making and being able to delegate and trust people to a trust. It certainly means thinking of others' needs. And ultimately, it's about performance, unleashing potential so that people can perform as highly as possible. The purpose of servant leadership, said Greenleaf, it's a philosophy. It's a set of practices that enriches the lives of individuals, builds better organizations, and ultimately creates a more just and caring world. And I don't know about you, but those three things sound more appealing today than at any other point in my lifetime. We certainly need a more just and caring world. We certainly need, in this frenzied time of rapid change and uncertainty, we need organizations to become better. And I think we're all looking for ways to have individual lives enriched, our own and those around us. So Greenleaf thought servant leadership, by focusing on the growth and the well-being of employees and stakeholders and organizations, that could be a distinguishing hallmark of organizations with servant leaders, that they'd be more successful because the people within them were liberated to be better. Starts with the people, helps the organization, ultimately changes the world. Greenleaf believed that if people are growing, then they desire to perform and achieve. Then they have more capability to accomplish things. Therefore, they're really serving in return, and it becomes a cycle of positive service and performance. More recently, because remember, this was all in 1970, but more recently, we hear so much about the employee experience. We hear about employee engagement. And if you think about it, there's a whole lot of overlap here. Employee engagement, Well, that means that there's an emotional connection to the organization that causes people to apply additional discretionary effort. And what is it that unleashes that or creates that emotional connection? It's the way the leader behaves. Leaders who behave in ways that dignify people, ennoble people, help people to grow, they have employees who are more engaged. When employees are more engaged, companies become stronger. They can do a better job of fulfilling their purpose and vision. And inside the organization, and certainly even reaching out to the customers and others that they serve, it's a cycle. Positivity breeds positivity. Growth fosters growth. People in those organizations are satisfied. They work harder. They pass it along. It's an awesome place to be. If you've ever been in that kind of a culture, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And if you've never been in that kind of a culture, well, you know what I'm talking about too, because it's that gap. You feel it. You know it. Let me do a little bit more here by way of contrast. Moving away from Greenleaf now, and I'm talking from Purdue's graduate professor of leadership, Rebecca Herman. She says that traditional leadership focuses on such things as strategy, goals, financial performance, customer satisfaction. And she says those things aren't bad, of course. Those are things we expect leaders to do. We want CEOs to focus on things that are going to bring us profit. But, Herman says, servant leaders go further. They focus on providing their employees with development opportunities. Employees today want to feel they have a job where they can succeed. They want an opportunity to be coached and mentored by someone. And since service leaders put people first, they get to know them on a different level. They help them to develop. They give them opportunities because they empower them rather than micromanaging them. We've got to do the contrast here, not only between traditional leadership and servant leadership, but also between servant leadership as I've been describing it here, the way it was originally thought and intended. And the contrast I want to make for you is between what it's supposed to be and what it's been interpreted to be. Now, these are all well-guided, or well-intended, but misguided attempts. I understand that when people consider themselves to be servant leaders, what they mean to do is support people. But what they might actually do, if they misunderstand the concept, what they might actually be doing deprives people of opportunities to learn and grow and to become autonomous and perform at their peak. Sharing power includes trusting people to do more than they're currently doing and finding ways to be more, not less, involved in the success of the organization. So here we are at this time in history when lots of organizations and teams are short-staffed. It's difficult in the time of the Great Resignation and the gig economy and the quiet quit. It's tough to find people who have the interest, the capacity, the morale to be developed and to grow, or at least that's what we think. So we assume because people are burned out and we're short-staffed, that as servant leaders, we should do the work for them. We should protect them. We should never ask them to do something that's beyond what they usually do. Instead, managers and other leaders start trying to pick up the pieces. And pretty soon, managers are no longer doing the work that managers really are supposed to do to develop people. Instead, they're doing the frontline work, withholding that, or they might say protecting people from that work. And we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. We don't want to bruise any egos. We don't want anyone to feel bad. So now we're also denying feedback to them. And how can they get better? How can they improve? How can they reach their peak if they're not getting any feedback? And pretty soon, as performance wanes and as people start to check out because they don't feel supported, they don't feel like they have growth opportunities, the next thing that happens is that we're making excuses to protect people. Well, they're so burned out. They're so overwhelmed. There's so much work to do. And I get it. That's what it looks like. That's what they're saying. That's what we believe. But by sheltering people and protecting people and making excuses for people, we're not growing people. We're not giving them challenges. We're not giving them stretch assignments. We're not helping them to expand their capacity and their capability. Instead, we're just letting them punch the clock and do work that is mundane because it's the same as everything they've always done before. Remember, servant leaders focus first and foremost on the growth of people. They unleash people potential. They stretch people. They help people to set their own development goals. They coach and they mentor to help them reach those goals. And they create opportunities for learning as often as possible, not just waiting for the company to fund some sort of training program, but even informally giving people opportunities to learn and to grow. This is all founded in the belief that every single person has hidden, undiscovered potential. But you've got to look for it. You've got to create opportunities for that potential to emerge. You've got to celebrate it and fan the sparks to let it burn bright so it shines through. And when you do that, then, and only then, are you truly a servant leader. What I'm going to do next is give you some ideas about how you can do what I'm describing, how you can be a servant leader, even in the midst of busyness, even in the midst of burnout, even in the midst of being short-staffed. Companies and teams just like yours who have all those things true for them also have servant leaders who transcend those circumstances and have employees who are highly engaged. They're outperforming their peers. They're learning, they're growing, they're satisfied. And those companies are stronger because of it. One of the first things I'd encourage you to do is to do less managing and more coaching. If you've never really had a coach in business, or if you don't truly understand what coaching is all about, I want to point you toward another presentation here on the People First Potential channel. We have a lot of them, by the way, that are built over the years and that are accessible on demand anytime. But there are a couple that have to do with what does it mean to be a coach? What does it mean to be a coach versus being a mentor? And why is coaching so important? So take a look, just do a search term coaching within the channel. You'll find lots of content there. But here's a snapshot. Being a coach does not mean being a manager who focuses on results, measures performance, and tells people what to do. All of that's important. There is a time and place for that. If you are in a supervisory role, of course, there are times when you have to wear a manager hat. But there's this other hat. And if you can become nimble and be able to discern when's the right time to be in manager mode versus what's an opportunity to be in coach mode, you're going to become a much stronger servant leader who grows people and who develops potential. So coaches are less focused on the here and now, get it done task. And they are more focused on the longer term, bigger picture growth of individuals. Whereas managers will give you answers, coaches will ask you questions, especially questions that promote self-discovery, questions that teach you how to think for yourself, questions that give you confidence because you realize as you think about these questions that actually you do have some ideas, you do have some answers and some options. And as confidence grows, so does your courage. You become more self-directed. You're a little braver in the day-to-day. And you don't need a manager to constantly be looking over your shoulder. You no longer need to take every little question to a manager because you're less dependent. You're much more independent thanks to all that coaching that you've been receiving. Now, servant leaders, I told you a moment ago, they share power. They share power in a lot of different ways. They have distributed decision making. They don't have to be a bottleneck of all decisions coming through them. They trust others, which means the organization is a whole lot more efficient. Instead of 10 people in a department attending a meeting, one representative of the department attends the meeting because the decision making and the authority and the ability to represent the team is shared by more people. Servant leaders also share power as they're growing people by delegating for development. Keywords here are for development. It's not just about shedding the work so that I don't have to do it. It's about, I see an opportunity to expand capacity. I see an opportunity for more people to cross train. I see opportunities because someone has potential or someone has a spark of interest in this area. And that creates an opportunity to give someone a little challenge, a challenge that might help them to grow and be engaged and discover their hidden potential. Another important aspect of sharing power is that you have to allow for some failure, the kind of failure that creates learning opportunities, failing forward, the kind of failure that we've all had, and it's not fatal. It's about growing. It's about discovering ways that don't work so that you become better able to pursue the ways that do work. It means you can take a few risks, you can experiment and learn every time something doesn't work. And you get better and stronger as a result of that. If failure in your organization is punished, then you inhibit experimentation and innovation. You make it impossible for people to grow if there's only one right way and everyone is constrained by those very, very narrow boundaries. Look for ways to give people some license, not in urgent situations where there are high stakes and great risk, but in smaller ways. And those smaller ways truly do exist in almost any job. You've got to look for them and allow them, though. Sharing power means that you don't just say this, but you actually do this. You invite all voices in. You're inclusive because you mine for a diversity of thought and you pursue alternative perspectives. And not only do you invite them, but you genuinely listen and work to understand and consider those ideas that come out onto the table. You don't do this to check a box. You do this because you appreciate that you don't have all the answers. No leader does. But when more people see themselves as leaders, when more people can contribute to the conversation, when more people are exposed to the process of decision making, that kind of shared power creates much better outcomes for individuals and for the organization overall. And finally, sharing power means that you don't micromanage. Just think how much easier your job's going to be when people are working more independently because of the coaching that you've been doing. And when people have more confidence because of the clarity that you've created, especially clarity around how much you believe in them and how much you're going to give them some opportunity to learn and grow. I really like the way that Eleanor Roosevelt said this. She said that a good leader inspires people to have confidence in the leader. A great leader inspires people to have confidence in themselves. I think this really drives home the point that being a leader does not mean being up on a pedestal. It doesn't mean that you're worshiped or revered and everything goes through you. If you think about any leader in history, you might tend to think about the power that leaders have over people and how people put their faith in the leader. But leaders who build other leaders have a lot more impact than leaders who have a lot of followers. The reason for that is because people want to be dignified and ennobled. People respond to people who see them in ways they might not see themselves. Giving people opportunities to have confidence in themselves, it is game changing. It's absolutely essential if you're ever going to grow, if you're ever going to be able to reach those lofty goals that you have, if you're ever going to keep people motivated and able to be retained in your organization, you've got to get to this point where they've got confidence in themselves. The job is just too hard for everyone if there are dependencies instead. Now, servant leaders, they put the needs of others first. They set aside their own egos. They're humble. They take the time to get to know people, including not just a person by their job title and the work they do, but who that person is, what their strengths are, what kinds of things they struggle with, what their goals are, and what motivates them. They get to know people in all these ways because they care about the person. And as they do that, they're exhibiting and modeling for others the use of soft skills like good communication and listening, like empathy, soft skills like critical thinking, and certainly emotional intelligence. Servant leaders ultimately are leading with their heart, not with their authority. And so soft skills are important for that. And they put people first. They put people first to build organizational strength. But remember, none of that's really possible if you misinterpret what servant leadership is. If you just jump in and do all the work yourself, you're displacing people. You're not putting them first. You are well intended. I do understand, but you're missing a really important opportunity to let people in their own right do that work, do more work than they ever thought they could, do bigger work, more strategic, next level work, because incrementally you didn't deprive them of those learning opportunities, but you gave them to them. And when you do all of that, really, another way we could say that is that we're motivating people. Let me give you a different kind of look at motivation. And here's another topic where if you want to do a deeper dive, right here on the People First Potential channel, there are a couple of recorded webinars about this topic of motivating others, but I'll give you the short version here. There are basically 4 ways to motivate people. You can do it in ways that are positive or negative. You might call that carrot or stick. Positive, that's an inducement for a positive outcome. Negative is a fear of something, a threat of something. It's unfavorable. We want to avoid it, so we work hard to avoid it. And then, in addition to positive and negative, you've got extrinsic or intrinsic motivations. Extrinsic come from outside the person. In the workplace, extrinsic motivators would include things like promise of a promotion, merit increase. Could include on the negative side, you're going to be put on a performance improvement plan if you don't. Extrinsic comes from outside the person. Intrinsic comes from inside the person. What is it that they love? What is it that they care about? What is the spark inside of them that makes work really enjoyable or makes something truly give them the drive to go deeper and to work harder? And when you look at all of the 4 options, the 4 possible combinations, you have the 4 scenarios. You've got intrinsic positive motivation. I love this kind of work. I'm so excited. I can't wait to get started. You've got positive extrinsic, the bonus, the raise, the award that I might win. And then you've got, I'm working my way around, extrinsic negative motivation. This is the threat or the fear of being demoted or of losing my opportunity to get a 5% merit increase this year. And then we have negative intrinsic from inside myself, something that wards me off or forces me to avoid. the last time I worked with this person, she was so difficult to work with. It almost cost me my reputation. I was losing sleep at night. I hope I never have to work with someone like that again. And I go into an avoidance mode. We have this upside down in the workplace, though. We spend so much time, energy, effort, money on extrinsic motivations that we never even get over into the realm of intrinsic. What we know from research is that the most powerful of these four options is intrinsic positive motivation. The spark inside of me will burn brighter and sustain me longer than anything you could ever offer me extrinsically. So, why not, as a servant leader, why not take time to get to know people and to understand what drives them to do what they do? What genuinely internally motivates them? When you know that, you can provide context. I'm asking you to do this task. I'm delegating this work to you. I'm hoping that you won't mind because, and where it really fits, the because, of course, I know you really care about XYZ, or I know you've been wanting to learn about ABC. You provide the context, you show something that is aligned with their motivation, as opposed to, hey, everybody, we're going to have a team bonus if we get this job done on time. It'll work a little bit. It won't work as well as individually, intrinsically motivating people, though. So try it. See if you can get to know people and intrinsically motivate them. That's something that servant leaders do. And I can't emphasize it enough. Servant leaders help people to reach peak performance. They help people grow, sometimes grow beyond what they even thought was possible for themselves. And they do this in a lot of ways. I've given you a few. Let me get some of the ways that are a little more in the day to day, the supervisory realm. Leaders set very clear expectations. They know that it's only fair and right to give people clear expectations. They know that clarity is what leads to confidence and that confidence is what leads to courage. And they know that clear expectations include what to do, how to do it, how much of it to do, what success looks like, and why this matters. They set those clear and consistent expectations, not just once in the job description, but over and over again, reminding people when they have meetings with folks or review sessions or check in on progress, they keep those expectations out in the forefront so no one's confused. And they give routine feedback, both positive and constructive, because that's important for people. It's important for them to know that you see, that you care, that you're supportive. Servant leaders don't withhold even constructive feedback. And think about this for a moment. If you're inclined to withhold feedback from people because you're nice, I want to challenge you. I don't think it's very nice. If you see somebody doing something that isn't effective or that will be viewed by others as wrong in any way, if you see that and don't say anything about it, that's not very nice at all. You're letting that person build a habit and continue down a wrong path. Shame on you. Instead, as a servant leader, serve. Do the thing that might be a little hard, give that feedback, and let people know it's because you care and you want to help them. Now, if giving feedback is hard for you, if setting expectations is difficult, you might need a supervisory skills training course. And over there at peoplefirstpotential.com, People First Leadership Academy, we have a supervisory skills course. There are 3 versions: an e-learning on-demand, anytime self-paced course, an open enrollment course that we offer quarterly, and you can come in and meet people from other organizations and have that virtual workshop series, or in a customized version available to teams of supervisors inside your organization. But don't punt on these. These are important, absolutely essential things that servant leaders do. So you've got to develop the skills. The perfect forum for feedback and for expectations and for being a servant leader is in a one-to-one meeting. A one-to-one meeting that is occasional, every week, every 2 weeks, maximum once a month. Don't go longer out than that between meetings. And these are dedicated primarily not just to the check-ins on the project, not looking backwards to see what you did last month, but primarily focused on developing and supporting people. How are you doing? What do you need? What is it that your next goal will be? Helping people to do that discovery, doing that coaching work together. And then finally here, I've mentioned it a few times, but two-way trust, super important. It's, yes, important for you as a leader to be trustworthy, but it's also really, really important for you as a leader to extend trust to people. Even if they've breached your trust in the past, for you to find ways to let them restore that trust and to have a fair shot. I mentioned that on People First Leadership Academy, we do have a workshop. It's interactive. It's actually a lot of fun. It's all about two-way trust and about the 12 dimensions of trust. It's free, so I hope you're going to go looking for that one too. In the attachments, there is a course catalog and a link to the Academy, so please don't hesitate to take advantage of all the things that are going on here. There's a lot of tangents that come from servant leadership. I want to show you one more thing that servant leaders do. I said they stretch people. They give them challenges, and your initial thought might have been, "No way, my people are so maxed out, they couldn't possibly want to be challenged." So what I'm showing you here is the research from Dr. Csikszentmihalyi at the University of Chicago. You've probably heard the term being in the zone, and this is sort of a business version of being in the zone. In the zone, that term, that phrase, you hear it used by, say, Olympic athletes, people at their peak performance. They smash a world record. Reporter sticks a microphone in their face and says, "Wow, how did you do it?" And they say, "I was just completely in the zone." And what that means is that they were fully focused. They were ready to give it their all. They were challenged to go beyond what they'd ever done before. Being in the zone, or as Dr. Csikszentmihalyi calls it, in the flow, that happens when the level of challenge is just a little bit greater than your current level of skill. You don't want the challenge to be tremendously greater than your skill level. That's called the panic zone. Nor do you want the level of challenge to be significantly less than your skill level. That's the drone zone. And a lot of people in the workplace find themselves stuck in the drone zone because their managers are protecting them from challenges that would stimulate them, that would give them the opportunity to be in the zone and to be at their peak performance and to be really passionate about and into the work that they're doing. Now, let's wrap up by talking about why this matters. I think you already know, but we live in a very, very fast-paced world, says Dr. Rebecca Herman. We're inundated with information at such increasingly large levels that it's almost impossible to keep up with it. But we're people first, and our basic human needs need to be met. Servant leaders understand how to build a workplace culture where teams and community are valued. People want that real feeling of community in the workplace. But our present workplace cultures can be disconnecting. We're virtual. We have virtual jobs. We're on virtual teams. People know each other virtually on social media, where we're doing work from home. We're maybe meeting in the Slack channel. Even dating is on some app. We don't have real connections in a lot of ways. And people, on top of wanting real connections, they want to feel that they've made a contribution to the world. They want work that has true meaning. So the need for servant leadership is to give people what they're craving: a sense of belonging, a sense of being energized and challenged so that they can be motivated at an intrinsic personal level, And we need managers to have the capacity to lead and to develop people. We can't have managers limited by doing all that frontline work that weakens the organization and robs people of the opportunities to do what would be more stimulating for them. When managers, in a misguided attempt to lead as servants, when they do the work for people, they're often surprised that people leave. And people are leaving because they aren't being given those growth opportunities. When you have true servant leadership, you're going to see that you have improved levels of employee engagement. And there's a domino effect. Yes, there are other presentations here about employee engagement too that will explain this further. But increased employee engagement leads to people stick around because they're emotionally connected. And then they apply additional discretionary effort. So you see increases in productivity levels, increases in customer satisfaction rates, more revenue coming in, fewer expenses going out, stronger profit margins. Servant-led employees don't fear that if they take a risk and try to do the right thing, that they could get punished. This is back to Rebecca Herman and her research. That makes them perform at more of a risk-taking level. They have more challenges. They feel more enabled and ennobled in their work. They take those risks. They rise up to those challenges, and they're more engaged because of it. When they get coaching and personal development, they're equipped. They're empowered to make better decisions, to serve customers in new ways. Empowered employees are more engaged. They're more satisfied in their jobs. Those people want to be a part of your organization. And it starts with you. It starts with you and the choices that you make to build a servant leadership culture, to hire people in leadership roles, especially who want to serve others, not just that they're wanting to grab that brass ring and have that title. You need to create a culture for servant leadership. Think about your performance metrics. Are they all about performance alone, or do they include some metrics related to people development? Are you giving people at all levels opportunities to develop as leaders in their own right? Are you recognizing and celebrating those situations where you see somebody is looking at others' needs, where they're making decisions and creating opportunities for others to learn and grow? And are you requiring managers to do the work of managers, discouraging them from doing the work that they used to do at the front line, but really making sure that people stick to the job that they're assigned to do, so that all of the work gets done, not just the most immediate short-term day-to-day tasks that end up crippling organizations as people become disenfranchised and leave. Okay, we got it all in there in the 45 minutes allocated. If you have questions, I think I have taken the ones that have come up so far. If you have questions, go ahead and email me. And please don't forget to visit peoplefirstpotential.com or to explore here People First Potential here on Bright Talk. This is the start of a conversation I hope you'll have in your organizations about how you can become true servant leaders, not some misinterpretation of what servant leadership is actually about.